All right, we not wasting no time, man. We not wasting no time. I'm doing these. I'm a long video dude. We're gonna do. Sometimes we're gonna switch it up and just do something real succinct, real. So if you catch it, you catch it. If you don't, you don't. I get it. I get it. But we're gonna get into this. Welcome to CNN. I'm your host, Kurt Kennedy. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. All right, we're not gonna do the whole intro on these videos because these are supposed to be shorter. I told y'all I was gonna give y'all some smaller joints. We're gonna get into this joint right now called The World in 8 Minutes. Now, if you follow my channel, you know I usually do an hour video. If my videos be semi-movie like, cinematic with it, just me talking off the Good Morning Vietnam, off the Robin Williams. But we're gonna do the world in 8 minutes, all right? Now, in order to understand what I mean by this, obviously the world is a conglomerate, it's big things, but there are things that really make sense that you can, especially if you're of the Christian tradition such as I am, there are things that make sense simply just looking at the word and the world, and we're gonna look at one of those today, the world in 8 minutes, all right? And I'm watching the clock. I'm watching the clock. And if you're not a believer, then you might not like this. But this is going to be the world in 8 minutes. All right, we're going to start here. We're going to go to this particular place. All right, this is 1 Corinthians 1, beginning in verse 18. We're just going to read a few verses, right? Watch this. The world in 8 minutes, all right? Beginning in verse 18, here's what Paul says. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. And then it says this, where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand, this is important, for Jews demand a sign, all right? For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and folly to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greek, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. Ladies and gentlemen, the world in 8 minutes. We have 6 minutes left to go. All right, so here is, you got to remember this. The Bible is written close to 2,000 years ago, all right? I think the last letter is written somewhere, possibly in the 90s, somewhere. 90s, I think, Revelation. John wrote this on the island of Patmos, and I think John died somewhere in 90 AD. So the Bible, most people believe, was composed by then. So 1934 years ago, somewhere, right? The Bible. All right. The Bible is speaking about, Paul is talking about this idea of wisdom. And I'm gonna take something and I'm gonna use this in another video way later, but I'm gonna say it right now just for the purposes of today. All right. When you think about, it's amazing that the idea of artificial intelligence is such a big deal today, right? I've used it before. Artificial intelligence is a big deal. Let me tell you why it's a big deal. Because if you look at the Bible, what we just saw, the contrast between the wisdom of the world and the wisdom of God. Well, if God is intelligence and he is the intelligent designer, God has intelligence, that's his wisdom. Well, then the wisdom of the world would be what? Artificial intelligence, right? And since Satan is the God of this world, then his intelligence is artificial. It's not God's wisdom. It's not the intelligence of God. It's the intelligence of the enemy of God. So it's essentially artificial intelligence. So it makes sense that this idea of artificial intelligence is having its way as a functioning technological platform today. But that's not the reason what we're talking about. The wisdom of the world in 8 minutes. I got 3 minutes and 20 seconds left to give you this wisdom. Let's go to this. All right. These are the two verses. Look at this. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and folly to Gentiles. All right. So here's what we're learning from 2,000 years ago almost, God is saying this, that the Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, right? So these two groups of people are that summarizes the whole world. The Jews, right, who knew God, and then the Greeks. And the Greeks are basically the Gentiles. And in two verses, they're summarized that are people who are opposed to the gospel. The Jews demand signs and the Greeks seek wisdom. This is what they're telling us. 2,000 years ago, here's God's evaluation of the world for us to know. The Jews demand signs and Greeks seeks wisdom. All right, so that's still true today, but the words that we use are different. The language is different, but the spirit of the Jews and the spirit of the Greeks is still present in the world today. And you and I see this all over the place. We see it on YouTube. We see it on colleges. We see it in media. We see it everywhere, especially when Christ is being proclaimed or someone is trying to talk about the truths of Christ. So God told us in 1 Corinthians, Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, right? But we don't use that language today. What do we call it today? We call it evidence and reason or logic, right? So here's how it looks today. Jews demanded signs. Signs were like miracles. They wanted proof. They wanted you to do something to demonstrate that what we were saying about God was true, what they were saying about God was true. Well, today it's evidence, proof. Prove the existence of God. Can you prove that God exists? And Christians are scrambling, trying to figure out how to prove. We find out all these different techniques to try to prove. We watch these apologetics channels. These people are wanting you to prove that God exists. They want evidence. They're like the spirit of the Jews that demand signs. Give me a sign, evidence that what you're saying is true about God. And then the Greeks, the Gentiles, they seek wisdom. Wisdom is reason. Make it make sense to me. Make it make sense. So the way we say now, the math ain't mathin'. Make it make sense to me. Evidence. I need reason because it doesn't make sense to me. It's not logical to me. Christianity is illogical. Evidence and reason are the modern objections to Christianity today. Evidence and reason. I want you to prove it. Show me evidence that what you believe that the Bible is true, that the God of the Bible is true. I want evidence. I want evidence. Or I want reason. It makes sense to me. I think Christianity is stupid. It doesn't make sense. It's just something you just believe. Make it make sense. And so you have Christians on both sides trying to prove the existence of God or trying to prove that it's true and trying to make sure that it's logical. It's logical. But it's the same idol, different altar. It's the same language package. What God told us almost 2,000 years ago, let's go back to what Jesus said. He says this. He says that for in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom. It pleased God through the folly of what we preach to say for Jews demand the sign and Greeks wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block, right? To Jews. Is it not the same today? Preaching Christ is a stumbling block to people who want a certain kind of evidence. They want to prove it. They want evidence. They want signs. It's a stumbling block. It's folly. It doesn't make sense to Gentiles who want reason. It doesn't make sense that Jesus died on the cross. That doesn't make sense. It's stupid to me. Why would I need to believe this? It's the same idol, different altar. It's amazing that the Bible, if you look at the Bible, not just in prophecy as all the prophecies, but even in verses like this, you'll see that the Bible is predicting the world and showing the world is the same as it was yesterday in 8 minutes. See ya.